Hello, you're very welcome to this afternoon's conversation. And I have the pleasure of being in the company of Professor Joseph Feller. And Joseph is the course coordinator and director of business information systems at University College Cork. You're very welcome, Joseph, and lovely
Thanks,
to meet
Jane.
you.
Good.
CK203, am I correct?
Yeah, CK203 is the BSc in Business Information Systems, or just BIS.
So, and it's a Bachelor of Science degree in
Correct.
Business Information Systems.
Well, we're in the Cork University Business School, which is where you also find the BCom and accounting and finance and so on. But it's actually one of Ireland's earliest and largest technology degrees. So it's that sort of hybrid animal of being a technology degree in a business context.
Oh, how interesting. And how long is the degree, Joseph?
The duration of the degree, 4 years.
And if you are considering a degree in business information systems, what subjects would you need to come to the university with?
Okay, so we don't actually have any special requirements for students. There's the normal requirements that UCC puts out in terms of incoming students, but we don't look for any specific combination of subjects. What we find is because the course actually is a mixture of many different things. So students are going to get a good grounding in the kind of subjects they'd associate with the BCom. So things like management, marketing, accounting, finance, economics, and so on. They're also going to be getting programming and technology related courses that they might associate with more of a science degree. And then in between the two, they're going to get a very unique curriculum, which is really about problem solving. So what we call analysis and design skills. And these three things kind of work together. The business modules provide students with a really deep understanding of the problem space of industry and organizations, so as part of our program. And the reason I'm saying all that is that what that means is first year for BIS students is probably one of the most varied experiences that you can have as an undergraduate. It would be very similar to, let's say, an art student taking 3 or 4 different subjects. And as a result, what you bring into the degree from, say, your leaving cert cycle, or we have a large number of students who actually come to us sort of post-experience, so more mature students coming back into education. And what you bring into it may make part of first year a little more familiar. So students who have studied accounting or business will find that a bit easier. Students who have studied programming before might find that a bit easier. But everything is actually taught from scratch.
Okay.
And what we actually find is that students very quickly find each other and support each other. And we find that already the students begin working together. And that's actually quite critical to what we do as a degree program, which is that we actually have students working in group-based work in almost every module. And the reason for that is that once they're in industry, IS professionals work in teams. Right? This is not it's not a solitary career path. It's a project-driven industry, and it's a team-based industry. So the more our students actually learn through practice, through the way they actually do their degree, to work in a way that is similar to the way they will eventually work as graduates, the better.
I was going to say, it seems from day one, you have your eye on what the student is going to be, how well equipped they're going to be, in terms of work ready and world ready.
Well, yeah, world ready, and I think as well, and it starts with being sort of me ready or individual ready. So I think that like one of the biggest challenges for anyone who goes into the IS industry is the fact that the nature of that industry. So IS professionals, I suppose, to start there, really do one of 3 things. Either they look to help organizations understand their problems. That was that first thing we were talking about. So they act as analysts, right? And you'll see that word analyst a lot in job titles. And it could be in the context of business analysis, which is about kind of structure and process, or people who are looking at data analysis, which is about kind of information. But that analyst role is really about understanding problems. There's another group of IS job roles, which are about designing and building the solutions to those problems.
Mhm.
And then there's a third kind of category of IS work, which is really about managing change. So when you build a new system, you change the way an organization works. That change needs to be managed. Along the way, building that system might be a multi-year, multi-million euro project. That project needs to be managed, and so on. So management, design and development, and that first piece of analysis. Obviously, the academic curriculum is what I just talked to you about, the mix of business and tech and problem solving. But intertwined throughout is, if you like, kind of the personal development curriculum. And what we do is we start in year one, looking at what are the set of skills that you as a student need to do or have to be ready to succeed in your 4-year degree. So at that point, what that module in first year is looking at is things like you as a learner.
Mhm.
So what is my personal learning style? Do I retain information better if I'm listening to it in something like this? Or do I retain it better if I'm reading it? Or do I retain it better if I'm doing it, right? And everybody's different. There's not one answer. So, so understanding your own learning style, beginning to develop a toolkit of strategies for managing your own time, right? So I was just talking about the importance of project management. It starts with you as an individual and managing the coursework of university. A lot of our students have part-time jobs as well as their full-time student role. They have an active social life. They're involved in clubs and societies. Balancing all of those different parts of life, that's actually a complex management
It
task,
absolutely
right?
is.
So we start there with the individual. How are you going to manage your own energy, your own talent and capability, and your own time, so as to get the most out of these next few years? Okay, and then in year two, we build on that and we turn to a different context and say, well, you're not going to stay in university for long. In fact, 12 months from now, you're going to be going off on placement. So we need to start thinking about the professional sphere. So how do you bring all those same skills? You've learned how to communicate and collaborate as a student. Now let's talk about how to communicate and collaborate as a professional. You've learned how to deal in an effective way with your lecturers. Now let's talk about how you manage a relationship with a manager instead. You've learned what it means to work on a student project with a group of students. Now let's look at what it means to work in a professional team, right? So we move.
And Joseph, sorry for interrupting you, but is that delivered then through lectures?
Yeah. So that's an actual module in the second year. There's 4 of them, right? So the first year is, like I said, the university skills. Second year starts to look at more professional skills. That same series of modules then continues into third year, where it focuses on making the right decision about what kind of placement experience you're seeking, presenting the best possible CV and interview performance you can to secure that place, and then making the most of that experience, right? So every one of our students between third and fourth year have the opportunity to work for 6 months full-time in a paid internship. We actually, when the students are on placement, and they'll go to placement companies kind of throughout Ireland, but also in the UK and also in the US, and occasionally further afield, but mostly those 3. And certainly when people finish the program, they'll go on to Discover BIS graduates are everywhere. They stay in close contact. They're very well connected through LinkedIn and platforms like that in particular.
But what you're saying is that you definitely focus all the way through on the day that they're going to leave and what they're going to do thereafter.
Yes.
And therefore invite the views of potential employers, I suppose, to help structure and shape.
Yes, yeah. So there's a lot of ways that industry has helped us, I think, build a very relevant program. And so one of the ways is what we were just talking about, the fact that network of placement partners, right? So in any given year, there's maybe 80 companies will participate in our placement program, but because companies kind of come in and out, overall that network is maybe a couple hundred different companies. So that process itself constantly helps us understand what are the challenges of industry today, what are the technologies that are in demand, and so on. But we also have an advisory board that's been with us from the start, made up of all sort of business leaders from across a range of industries in Ireland. And they meet with us regularly throughout the year. They review our curriculum with us. They help us understand the challenges of, as you said, creating sort of world-ready students. And I think the students who really succeed and who really make the most out of their time at UCC, again, whether BIS or not, are the ones who embrace that fully and say, actually, you know what, I'm here to start my career now. I'm going to be part of these societies, and I'm going to kind of contribute to that. I'm going to seek out, maybe not just the 6-month placement you organized, but why would I have to wait that long? I'm going to, take a little bit of extra care and try to find something in the summer of second year as well. Like, we have a full team devoted to placement. And like I said, there's that third year module preparing for placement. During the 6 months of placement, myself and members of that team, our director and the team members go into actually visit the students and the companies. We try to make 2 visits to each company. So kind of in the first, say, 8 weeks of the placement, to make sure everyone's settled in and that there's a good plan in place for them. And then towards the very end to see how did it go. And then they come back in 4th year and they take a final module in that curriculum we were talking about, where we work with them to sort of unpack the experience. They prepare a report based on that experience, folding the whole placement back into their CV, thinking about what that means now in terms of their next set of career plans, and planning for graduation and beyond.
I'm minded to the UCC Graduate Attributes Program as you're speaking, talking about the core values, and I'm just looking, creators, evaluators, and communicators of knowledge, digitally fluent, independent and creative thinkers.
Yeah. I think so. So that idea of independence is an interesting one, and creativity. So I think that oftentimes people perceive both business and technology as being kind of dull. And that's a mistake, right? So actually, I think these are very creative industries. Like I said before, the heart of IS is this notion of problem solving. And problem solving is definitively an act of imagination, right? So it starts with perception. It starts with seeing what's in front of you. But ultimately, it relies on your ability to imagine a different future, right? How can we change this to make it better? So that's actually a very creative process. And it's one which we see happening with our students all the time as they, for instance, learn how to program. And it goes from maybe something that's quite difficult at the start as people begin to understand how do you even read this alphabet? It's a different, it's like learning a new language. But then as soon as they've kind of internalized that, they realize that actually programming has nothing to do with these languages. Programming is about, imagining this process that you're asking the machine to do. And once they make that sort of jump, they begin to see this as actually, this is a really exciting, puzzly kind of activity. And it changes their whole mindset around it, which is quite interesting. And you see the same thing people bringing into, like we run modules, for instance, that deal with things like interaction design and how do you design a user experience. So the actual, the technology that you're interacting with as a person, who decided to get rid of the button on my phone. Someone made that decision and said, actually, we don't need those buttons anymore. There's a different way we're going to interact, right? There's a whole world of technologists out there right now who are trying to figure out how do we build a positive kind of interaction between people and technology when so many of the things we take for granted on a daily basis are different this year and will be different for some time, Yeah.
It's fascinating because if you you need to be taught approaches to problem solving. And it seems to me what's coming to the top, Joseph, in our conversation, which is really interesting, is that you are, you're teaching technology because it is
Yeah.
information systems. So you're teaching technology, you're teaching business, but you're actually teaching people to understand themselves and to approach problems in a kind of a solution-driven way, but a methodical way.
Yeah.
And therefore that they're open-minded when they leave and can find employment actually anywhere, because everywhere
Yeah,
there
I
are
think
talents.
that's a really good summary. And in fairness, if our students are recognized for that, then we've done the job that we
Yes.
set out to do, right? And I think you're right. It's a matter of approaching things with maybe a creative angle to it. And I think maybe the final piece of that puzzle is just the communication part. That realizing that we don't do it alone. We do it as a community, and we do it in partnerships and in teams.
So Joseph, obviously the world of technology is changing dramatically. And so do you provide opportunities for individuals who are practitioners, who are already out there in the workplace, to come back?
Yeah. So we do. We actually have quite a few students who come into each year of our program through, basically not through the CAO. So that might include, a variety of kind of access students, but also quite a high number of mature students who are coming back to us after a few years in industry. And we also run graduate level programs or postgraduate programs. So we have programs that are at the master's level, but also postgraduate diplomas and higher diplomas. And so there's quite a few opportunities for people to say, maybe it's time to pivot a little bit from whatever I've been doing.
And what's your background?
Originally, I trained as an anthropologist, so the study of culture. Yeah, and then I basically followed people into the digital world in the early 90s. My initial interest in that whole emerging space was purely from a cultural point of view of what are we as people when we're online. And then gradually that moved into other interests around how we were working online. And really my own research for the last 20 years has primarily focused on that. It's been about how we collaborate through technology to build things like the Wikipedia, or to build things like the Linux operating system, or any of these projects, which maybe tens of thousands of people have collaborated, often without ever meeting each other, to build very complex things, right? So I was following that path, but
so
we don't make our students do any of this.
Because I was going to say, bringing your experience to bear and your interest. So Joseph, I was very interested to hear what you were saying about creativity. I've heard, even this morning, I was on a call where the head of a big technology company was saying that their preference in future will be actually for the creative mind. The sense that the Masters of Business Administration with the Masters of Fine Arts is a really, really fantastic combination to have in any boardroom. So talk to me about creativity.
Yeah, so I think creativity is, it's part and parcel to what we do. And I think that one of the ways that we try to kind of encourage that, and it's not something that's required of students, but it's an opt-in exercise that we do every year. And we've been doing it for 22 years at this point. And that is, we actually invite all of our undergrads every year to submit some form of creative expression. So it could be a drawing, painting, photography, poetry, short stories, essays. We've had people build furniture and take pictures of that. We had someone write poetry in the form of computer code, right? People are quite wild about the whole thing. But we take all of these contributions that we get from the students, and we'll like do some photography shoots of the people who are submitting the work, get them to write up a little bit of a story about, what's this piece about, and what was its inspiration. And we take this whole thing, we publish it as a book. every year. It's called the BIS Anthology. It's a physical book, and then we also put the PDF online. So we can maybe put the link there in the on the Cubs UCC website. There's a link to the various anthologies for the last few years. But we take this physical book, obviously we give it to the students themselves, but we also send it to all of our placement partners, the companies that work with us on placement. We send it to our graduate hire partners, to guidance counselors in different schools in Ireland, and so on. And the anthology as a tradition has become part of kind of the BIS identity. But more importantly, participating in the anthology actually becomes part of the personal brand or CV of the student. And I suppose what we want, and we know we've succeeded, every year that you go through our program and when you graduate, at every one of those points, there should be more and greater variety of opportunities available to you than the year before. So the anthology, it's a celebration of our students' creativity, which is significant. But it's also, I suppose, almost a living CV of the students to say, here's what I have to offer beyond what's on the paper there. I am a whole person, right?
Your hallmark. So go back to the research areas in business information systems. So
Yeah, there's
give me an
actually quite
example,
a
let's say
lot.
2 or 3 areas of research.
So we've nearly 30 academics on the staff. And as well as teaching our students, they're all engaged in different forms of research. So one of the research centers that we have is the Health Information Systems Research Center. So they do work related to everything from telemedicine. So in other words, doctors, providing medical care through technology. But also things like the self-monitoring of illness and health. Kind of there's involvement in some of the stuff that's going on right now around COVID in terms of tracing and so on. There's a second research center that's there's quite a bit of overlap with the health space. But this center is called the Center for Resilience and Business Continuity. So that's first responders, that's paramedics and police and firefighters and so on. And they look at how technology is used when we're reacting to crisis, right? So obviously there's an overlap there with health. We have several other research centers then that are looking at the world of finance, either from the point of view of the individual consumer, financial consumer. So, how do you manage your personal finances through technology? But also looking at how major banks regulate their businesses, how there's a whole new generation of sort of innovative startup companies in the financial space, looking at new ways of doing financial services. So all of that sort of intersection between technology, innovation, and finance is there. We have another group that works on questions of ethics. So looking at what are the ethical questions that are raised by technology? What are some of our ethical responsibilities around information, all this information that we gather and manage? So a really broad range. When people go off into their job, the job market post-graduation, there's opportunities for technologists, there's opportunities for analysts, there's opportunities for managers. We tell a story a lot about this particular trio, which came out of one of the very first graduating classes a long time ago. All three of them did their placement at the same company. All three of them went on to take on their first graduate role at that same company. All three of them have built 20 years careers at that same company, and all three in totally different directions. One is essentially a financial analyst, a financial manager. The second runs the tech team that basically supports that function of that same company. And the third went into purely general management. So they all followed very different paths.
And you said that this is a team sport,
Yeah,
and that embarking on a career with a degree, a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Information Systems, the likelihood is that you will always work as part of a team. And
I think that's true.
And I think that in the course of our very interesting conversation, we've definitely got a real sense of the fact that you and your team are always thinking, as I said earlier in the conversation, are thinking about what the graduate is going to do, be work ready, world ready. But the point is that they will be educated broadly enough to fit in many different areas. And then it's up to them to hone in on the specificities, as your trio did, as they went on through life. So they left University College Cork with a skill set which enabled them to adapt.
Yes.
And apply themselves into the area that the me, as you said earlier, flourished in.
Yeah.
My concluding question, Joseph, is why would you study at University College Cork and not anywhere else?
One of the things that has really struck me over the last few years, kind of watching their experience, which were positive experiences, and was that I really am not sure that any university in Ireland takes its students quite as seriously as UCC. And I actually mean that quite sincerely. I think that whether it's the attitude of the actual academic departments in terms of how they deliver their degrees, the attitude of the university as a whole in terms of its strategic focus, and I think in particular the attitude of the students themselves, right? Mm-hmm. So the student societies, the student union. This is an institution that really does take its responsibility to the individual student, I think, very seriously. And that's not to say that the other universities are negligent, but I really think there is something special here. I think this is a place where everyone that you're going to be involved in as a student, your fellow students, your teachers, your tutors, your colleagues kind of across the university, your societies, every one of those people really do want to see you succeed. They want to see you succeed on your own terms, living up to your own potential, and really bringing something kind of unique out of it. So I think that student focus, to me, is the selling point for UCC.
Well, thank you, Joseph. And for anybody who's listening to this conversation, I certainly have enjoyed it immensely.
Yes, I have too. Thank you.
And clearly, any information about the degree is available on the web. It's CK203.
CK203. Yeah.
CK203. And Business Information Systems, a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Information Systems. So all details can be found there. And we look forward to welcoming you.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Employability and career development initiatives are delivered through curricular, co-curricular and extracurricular activities. Over 90% of our programs offer placements internationally and nationally. Throughout your time in UCC, you will have the opportunity to develop employability skills through entrepreneurship modules, skill sessions, and memberships of clubs, societies, becoming a class representative, and getting involved. Throughout your student journey, UCC Career Services will support your career planning with one-to-one career consultations and coaching. The Career Services collaborate with academic departments and other UCC units to deliver bespoke and standalone employability and career-related workshops and events for all students and recent graduates. Our annual recruitment fair is one of the largest national career fairs, featuring up to 100 top graduate employers. For more information about UCC employability initiatives and the Career Services, visit ucc.ie/careers.